Welcome to the High Bar, your weekly watering hole for lighthearted conversation with people who care about culture that matters. I'm Warren Etheridge, your host and barkeep. I promise never to cut anyone off, while encouraging all to think responsibly. Today, join me and my guest, filmmaker, poet, novelist, singer-songwriter Pete McCormack, as we raise a toast to and raise the bar for boxing. There are many things in this world I don't understand. Boxing is certainly one of them. I invited a Canadian to talk about it because I knew I'd be safer that way. And I really want to discuss the sport and just our need for spectator aggression with our guest, who is really incredible. Filmmaker, singer-songwriter, novelist, poet. You do drywall, I believe, as well. And made the fantastic film, Oscar-approved last year, Facing LA, shortlisted for Best Documentary. Pete McCormack, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming down from Canada.
Well, in Canada, we only fight collectively, right, as boxers. It's all in a ring all together, right? It's a socialistic thing we do.
That's so good of you. Nobody's the winner either, is it?
We're all losers,
That's
actually.
right.
Everybody's a loser.
But you learned something about boxing, not because you are a boxer yourself, but because you made this film, Facing Ali. And I take it that you had to fall in love with the sport to some extent. So share that passion with me.
Well, I was a huge boxing fan when I was a kid.
You were?
Yeah, massive. With Ali, was a huge fan. And plus, I played hockey growing up. Don't forget, where the old adage, you know, I went to a hockey game and I went to a boxing match and a hockey game broke out. So
I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. That's
see,
how we say it in
I'm like George. Yeah, I'm like George Bush talking about it. You fool me once, and you fool you twice, and I'm tennis. From 10, you know, that he just couldn't pull it off.
He couldn't
there,
do it.
and got elected doing that.
Yeah.
So
hockey and boxing.
Hockey and boxing, yeah. But I just love Muhammad Ali. Of course, was captivating for anybody 10 years old in 1975, and that was me. And so that
but
era.
You're Canadian. You're a singer-songwriter. That does not equate to. I'd like to watch guys beat each other up.
Yeah, but I didn't really do anything artistic. I drew a lot as a kid, actually, but I didn't do anything artistic until I was about, and still in question, but I didn't do anything artistic until I was about 20, 18 or 19, took up the guitar. I was actually serious about playing hockey, and I liked boxing as well.
So what was it? What
Well,
drew you in?
I think Ali was just compelling. He was so charismatic, you know, and in those days, like the heavyweight division now is sort of a bit of a disaster. You know, the two champions are brothers. They won't fight each other. One's about 7 foot, and he's covered in hair. I'm 6
Daniel
foot.
Baldwin? What was that?
That's it. Well, he's not in shape anymore.
Okay,
oh, Danny's not in shape. I think he's born again. Is he he's gone born again or conservative?
Has he really?
Something.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't care about the Baldwins. What do I know about the Baldwins?
Yeah.
But I think I have no
America
idea.
still doesn't care about Daniel Baldwin.
He's been embraced by Canada, let me tell you. I don't know. What's the question?
I want to get to boxing because your film, Facing Ali, sort of lured me in because I fell in love with the characters. But before that, I never saw a boxing match and got excited, except in Rocky.
Yeah. Well, that's an ironic thing you mentioned Rocky, because that broke Joe Frazier's heart, being a Philadelphia fighter. He wasn't born there, but living in Philadelphia. He was so upset when they finally made a big statue for a boxer, and of course it's going to be Joe Frazier. No, it was Sylvester Stallone. So that broke his heart in Philadelphia, poor guy.
Stallone's neither a boxer nor an actor.
That's
so it really is sort of sad, isn't
that's
it?
Good. That's good. Yeah.
M. Night Shyamalan wants his statue in Philly too, but no, not happening.
No one gives an inch around there.
That's right.
But I don't know. You know, it really literally is. It's Ali. Ali is just so. He was so universally interesting. He was so unorthodox, both in his boxing style and also in his character. And he was, socially very interesting, politically interesting. He was good-looking. He was poetic. He was fast-speaking. And he had all these sort of contradictions to how we perceive a boxer to be. And similarly, the movie was an attempt to show these old warriors as human beings, not as just, first as human beings, then as boxers, and why they were boxers, and why does somebody box. And I tried to pull those secrets out of them and those issues, because they're more interesting to me. In fact, it was really important for the film to talk about the 60s, talk about Ali's conversion to Islam, talk about the Nation of Islam, which is a strange sect of it, and also his political fight over Vietnam and different things, and of course the civil rights movement right in the middle of all of that. And so I really didn't take it as a boxing movie, but boxing is compelling by definition, just like a car accident in a certain way. I mean, it's more skilled than a car accident, depending on the person getting in a car accident. But
because anybody can get in an accident.
You really can. You can. But to get in a car accident and get punched at the same time is really, that's a talent you can't even. No, so I think it's just a compelling, boxing is compelling because it's mano mano.
So when you were watching Ali, though, and granted he was fascinating, was it about the boxing or was it about those things? Did you see yourself in him a little bit? Because you're political, you're poetic. Did you think like, oh, that's a little bit like me if I were strong?
I don't think so. If I was strong, good-looking, and black, it would have been exactly the same thing. And I was also 35 instead of 10. But other than that, we were like this, Ali and I. I couldn't tell us apart sometimes.
It's like the movie Twins, right?
I was actually born Cassius Clay, and what a coincidence that is. He's Cassius Clay, and I changed my name to Pete McCormack. It was just for no reason though. Just no. But I think I
converted to alcoholism.
This is water. We all know it. Don't kid yourself. Where's my chai?
Well, I'm sorry.
Canadians.
Lord.
Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke.
Doesn't drink before
get
noon.
Get me James Toback.
That's right.
I want him on the set. I think that
Toback would be on acid by now, for goodness sake.
Well, I don't know what to say about that. But do you have any ayahuasca or some peyote? And we can do a religious experience.
Sure.
No, I think that.
Well,
can you even say drug in America without getting war on drugs coming at you? I'm changing the subject. They just
no, medicinal drugs you certainly can. We advertise those all the time.
Yeah, some people think marijuana is medicinal. In fact, in California they do now. It's medicinal to the economy there now. Is what it is.
Right.
But
Tom Skerritt could support that economy by himself.
In fact, he might. He might. I think that. What the heck was the question? I think.
No, I thought maybe it's wish fulfillment watching Ali because I think you have something in common.
He had a certain. He was just. It was like he was so. I think it was like a team, a hockey team that you like, or a baseball team that you like. He was so above the pack, But ironically, when I started to be when I was 10 in '75, he'd just beaten George Foreman, so he'd even magnified the legend at that point. And then he fought the Thrill in Manila, which is a classic, just a brutal fight. But that's sort of the end of his movement up, and then it's all down. So actually watching Ali in '76 and '77 when he fought Ken Norton and different people like that, and those fights when he just wasn't in shape anymore, and then by '78, '79, by '79 and '80 he was already starting to slur. I didn't notice that as a kid. You still hoped that he would beat Larry Holmes when in fact any adult should have sensed or said, and some did, that you should not and cannot fight anymore. But that's boxing and that's showbiz. But I think watching him was actually difficult, watching him, because you thought, where's the magic? When's it going to come back when he was fighting? And he didn't have it anymore, but he'd still win some of those fights on guile or close decisions, And so I actually went through that period of watching something that someone you thought was almost mythic not quite be mythic anymore. So that's interesting as well.
It's like Laurence Olivier at the end of his career, where he's just taking the money.
He was, he was good in marathon. He was good marathon man, though.
That's not the end of his career.
Well, don't yell at me on here.
No, we got to get to Inchon. Inchon, where he's playing MacArthur, for goodness sakes. He's like an old Jewish man playing like MacArthur. It's ridiculous.
Was MacArthur? I didn't know that. I had no idea.
It's a terrible movie, funded by Sun Myung Moon.
Yeah, is that right?
Few people know that.
Wow, I didn't know that. And he got everybody on set. He made them marry as well. It was a Mooney thing, wasn't it?
But now, Ali was key to you getting in, right? Mm-hmm. But Tyson, potentially, possibly, arguably, as good a fighter, right? But nobody's drawn in by Tyson. They may be drawn in, but in a very different way.
Well, actually, I would only slightly disagree with that in the moment Tyson came on board, everybody was drawn in by him that was compelled by boxing, and not in a character sense, but in the sheer tenacity and power of his early fights. It was quite compelling again. It was like watching the car wreck, not seeing his car wreck coming, but just watching the fact of two people, in slight danger. For some reason, that's compelling to human beings. It's just, I don't know why that is, but we are compelled by it.
But it seems remarkably primal, and I can't believe we haven't gotten past that.
No, that's an interesting question, but we haven't got past so many things that are far worse than boxing. That's why people always say, we should ban boxing or something like that. And I'm like, really? We go to war, we drop bombs on children, the drone bombs right now, in Pakistan and so on, people being killed. I don't get excessively political, but it's so far.
You already have, don't worry.
Boxing looks great at that point, really of how we can treat people actually. So, but it is an interesting reality that you can actually have a sport where every moment is a slight concussion. Literally, you have repeated blows to the head in a sport. It's just not going anywhere positively late in the career.
Right, and your movie proves that. You see the effects of people who've been punched in the head a lot. Although to me, I don't need to be punched in the head a lot to know that getting punched in the head a lot is not a good thing.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult thing. People box. What I understood and what I saw even before the film was that people come out of a certain demographic and a certain either they're racially disenfranchised or economically disenfranchised or both. That fight, and all the boxers said it. George Chuvalo, the Canadian boxer, said, a doctor's son gets a punch in the nose, a bleeding nose, says, "I'm going to make a living doing this." I don't think so.
Right.
And Henry Cooper from England said, you don't find middle class boxers. In fact, he made a great comment early on. He said, in the 30s and 40s, the boxers were Irish and Italian and Jewish, actually. And of course, there are very few Irish or Italian or Jewish boxers now because economically they don't need to fight, and now they're mostly, as he said, Mexican and Hispanic. Ironically, he left out saying they were black, but it's interesting to note that there were boxers were black in the 30s and black today, a high percentage of boxers, and that's not. I don't think that's coincidental.
Right. Proving how opportunities have opened up.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting. It brings on all kinds of interesting issues. Of a still difficult situation for sure. That, you can see it with all kinds of you see it right now with the war on drugs. Back to the marijuana and the war on drugs. The percentage of people that are incarcerated that are black, even compared to drug use, is so high that it breeds a caste society, because once people are jailed, when they get out of jail for even a small nonviolent drug offense, they come out, they can't vote, they can't barely get places to live. 70% of employers have said, listen, if this person is a felon, we will not hire them, period, an ex-con. And so it brings up all kinds of questions, but the fact that boxers are still black is not coincidental.
Well, let's look at that for a second, because it's interesting, because the socioeconomic reasoning for getting into boxing, or possibly for doing drugs, that's another argument, is one thing, and it's actually fairly clear to me.
For selling drugs, actually, is more important on that one, not even
that's what I'm curious about, is that still there is a larger component of people that are operating the system, whether it's the war against drugs or actually the drug trade, that is supported by the middle class and upwards and white community.
Indeed, that is definitely true. I mean, even Hillary Clinton said, she said the other 3 or 4 months ago when two, I think, Americans were killed in Mexico in Ciudad Juarez. It's a massive, a little city across from El Paso that is just overrun by drug wars and drug fighting. And she said, this war on drugs isn't working. But and then she proceeded to send more money for military operations in Mexico, which is what the war on drugs is. But the point is, she said that the war on drugs is really funded by middle class drug users. It's so many drug users in America and in the West, actually. It's not just in America, of course, but in the West. And so that's supply and demand.
Right.
It doesn't matter what economist you are, you can figure that one out.
But the people who are demanding it are punishing the people who are supplying it.
It's interesting, isn't it? And it does definitely ghettoize certain groups of people even further, marginalize them even further, of who are arrested. People are arrested far more 100 times more likely to be arrested for crack than cocaine, when they're very similar drugs, actually. And the fact is that white middle class white kids do cocaine, and in the inner city, blacks are more likely to do crack. And so there's a lot of massive problems with this situation that people don't want to look at.
Right. When I went to high school in New York with mostly upper class kids, the person not doing drugs was the anomaly there. So the police could have just come through and raided everybody's locker and cleaned up the city pretty quickly.
And then we would have had the prison industrial complex, which we have now, which is a curious and difficult situation. But where were we boxing?
Yeah, boxing. That's